104.7 The Cave, Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens. This is Dark Side of the Stream, episode 168. Jay's pick this week was Get Gotti on Netflix.
Yeah, maybe they're the same guys that did that Vice City one.
Yeah, that was really well done.
Yeah,
a lot of really good insight, not just
it moved quickly.
Yeah, not just from the DA and the FBI and the NYPD, which it was interesting how they didn't really have any interviews from the NYPD in this. Yeah. It was mainly feds or Department of Justice guys
or mob guys,
or mob guys. But I knew a lot about this already. I'm a big fan of this stuff. Sopranos is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. Massive fan of The Godfather. Have you ever actually watched Sopranos before?
No.
You've never seen The Sopranos? Have you ever seen Goodfellas?
Yeah. I should watch Sopranos because I'm
like Goodfellas?
Really into that stuff. Yeah. I love these guys. Casino, all those. I love all this stuff.
Yeah. I know you're not a big fiction guy, but I put Sopranos.
No, I've been told this.
Sopranos in The Wire in probably the top 3 dramas of all time.
Wow, yeah.
I personally think The Wire is just a little bit better because I thought that from the perspective of storytelling, how they change every season to kind of go over like the way crime infiltrates these different assets of like different parts of life. It was just brilliant. The writing in that show is amazing. The Sopranos is also unbelievably amazing, and that whole journey is so good. But I think The Wire is just a little bit better. But that's just open to debate. You need to watch.
Yeah,
Sopranos.
I've been told that.
I'm like thinking about going back through it again. To be honest with you.
Yeah, and I watch a lot of YouTube channels from former mobster guys.
And you like Sopranos?
Sammy the Bull. He's like he's like the awesome uncle that you never had. He sits there and does fireside talks
about some of the crazy stuff he did.
There's a few of these guys. Yeah. Michael Franchise, he has a nice one on there as well. Yeah, they actually do a really good job with their YouTube channels, and they really do like business, talk about the business side of it, you know.
Very well, they're all businessmen.
Which is same with our government, is the same kind of racket, really.
And that's really how this all starts. You've got a guy who is one of the captains of arguably the biggest crime family in the world. And at the time, there was kind of a changing of the guard going on. You've got the old school guys who were completely against dealing drugs. Yeah. And then you had the new school guys who said, you know what? There's a lot of money to be made here.
Yeah, I know.
The old school guys were like, it's blood money. But then the new guys are like, what are you talking about? You kill people for less. What do you mean blood money? You kill people. But for some reason, they were totally against drugs.
They thought they had very strong family values,
which was which is such an odd
seems
thing.
Odd,
like, I get it.
It seems odd.
But at the same time, you're like, wait a minute. You're big about family, but then you killed this guy's cousin.
Yeah, but they're like, you would never kill anyone in front of their family. You would never mess with anybody's family. They have and they said that they're like, hey, these cops are tailing so and so. Should we take them out? And they're like, no, those cops are just doing their job. We're doing our job. Whoever does the job better. They also
understood that too.
Yeah,
and that's
very interesting.
So eventually Gotti's very upset. He doesn't get made the next man in line, so he goes after the boss, and who is then gunned down basically in broad daylight.
Kind of an aggressive takeover.
Yeah, very aggressive takeover. I mean, they all knew immediately as soon as Gotti came to the forefront as the new boss who was involved. Yeah. But I thought that was a very interesting thing that they talked about was how they did all their surveillance with the guy inside the box.
Oh, the guy inside the box,
the refrigerator box,
so he could pick the lock.
Yeah, they basically put this refrigerator box outside one of the clubs that they talked in and openly talked in. And he just sat inside that thing all day until nighttime, where he then picked the lock, got inside, put it in, and they were able to record him. I thought the whole process of getting field recordings and stuff to get the court papers signed to actually was so crazy. The fact that you only have 90 seconds to listen. And if you hear something illegal, then you can keep listening. If you don't, you shut it off and you move on.
That's
so 90-second intervals, which I thought was just unbelievable. But it wasn't that actually started the ball rolling for Gotti and how they actually got him. And we'll talk about how that went down next. Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave. Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens back in the studio. This is Dark Side of the Stream, episode 168, Get Gotti. So the federal government was very much interested in John Gotti, especially since he had become the new boss of arguably one of the biggest crime families in the country. in the mid to late 80s. The NYPD, in New York City Police Department, wasn't really involved with the federal task force trying to take this guy down, and it was very obvious. I think in the second episode, where one of the field agents said, "We didn't really talk with the police at that point," and you kind of got the feeling there was a reason for that, and obviously them probably thinking that a lot of them were in the pocket of the mob.
That too.
So back to Gotti, up until this point, most bosses did not want coverage. They didn't want people knowing who they were.
Yeah, they played. It would be easier for them to.
Yeah, they just thought, I want them to think that I'm a custodian. And John Gotti had a business cards that said that he was a plumber, something like that. He dealt in plumbing supplies.
Yeah,
which I think is hilarious. And trash man and all that.
He was
stuff.
Flashier, for sure. He was lived a life. He was rock star, hanging out with celebrities.
He liked the attention. He loved it. It seemed like his guys loved it. There was one of his unders that said as soon as he saw his paper the first time, he went out and partied because he thought he was, he's like, this is great. But the old school they wanted to work in the shadows. I mean, if you go back to the very beginning of all this, the mafia and all this stuff and the Black Hand stuff, they operated in secret. And there was a reason for that, because you didn't want the government to know what you were up to. I mean, it'd be one thing to be flashy and just go out guns blazing, but these guys were, as we mentioned, businessmen, and they still are. You just are making money and just, not the best areas of life. So the best thing to do is just be anonymous. You don't want anyone to know that you're the boss. You want to operate behind the shadows. Not John Gotti. And it was very obvious that Gotti had a very hot temper, because what inevitably started the whole ball rolling in the case against him was an assault charge that he faced a couple years before he became the boss. And basically, it was a road rage incident. This guy is driving home, trying to get home. There's a car double parked in New York. He does what every New Yorker does when this happens, and just lays on the horn. He happened to land the horn for the wrong person, because then out walks a mob captain. Well, that's the thing. He didn't know. Like, he just thought he was some dude. And when you look at the mugshot, it's not like he was wearing a suit or anything.
To court, and you're like,
he's just wearing workout clothes.
That's why he quickly changed his story.
They get into a fight. The guy gets his butt kicked. He goes and flags down 2 cops. He's like, hey, these guys just assaulted me over a parking space. They book him. 2 years later, they go after him, and Gotti, I mean, normally an assault charge, you're looking at like maybe a misdemeanor, but Gotti was a felon. Gotti had done time in the early 70s for a murder. That's what ended up making him a made man. For example, if you are in the mafia and you get asked to do something like that and you get popped and you do your time, doesn't matter if it's 2 months or 20 years, you get out, you're going to get paid back. And that's usually when you get made. Because you've proven that you will do what it takes for the family, and that you will sit and do your time for the family. No questions asked. So he gets out, and he's a made man. And he gets into that altercation. They throw the charges at him. Then they can't find the guy at all.
Yep.
Come to find out, a couple of weeks later, he's in a hospital with a broken arm, and he doesn't want to testify. Because now that guy he got into a fight with is basically the Godfather.
Imagine that.
What would you do?
Oh yeah.
I tell you, I fell downstairs. I fell down. I'm so clumsy. I'm an idiot. I'm the idiot here. What did I do?
I was punching myself.
Yeah, I felt that. I just can't stop hitting myself in the head. I don't know why. But
that guy must have it's not worth it. Freaking out.
Hell yeah. A lot of days. But then, of course, the media just throws his face everywhere. They start printing his name everywhere. That guy, man, I would have been so. Dude, then anytime someone else was double parked for the rest of my life, I'd just go find another place to park. Honey, I'll be home in about 30 minutes. I'm 5 miles away. I'll be there. I know. Screw that, dude. But that was kind of the start of the legal woes. But then little did the federal, I guess the FBI know the Department of Justice was already working on a case against him. And we'll get to that next. Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave. Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens back in the studio. This is Dark Side of the Stream, episode 168, Get Gotti. So that was another thing. The federal government has, obviously the FBI and the Department of Justice, but like one of the agents said, we didn't work with the New York City police on this thing because we really didn't communicate a whole lot during this period of time. But it was interesting that all of a sudden here comes an assistant DA that's like, oh, we had a huge case against him, while the FBI is like investigating him. You would think that those two would be like, oh, hey, wait a minute, you guys are doing something. Well, let's put this
and they
together.
also wanted the fame of being the one to bring it down.
And that's also part of the whole deal too. But yeah, the DOJ is then they come in and they say, hey, we got this guy on murder. I think it was robbing a truck, illegal gambling, racketeering, all kinds of stuff. And they then lay out their case for him. But then it just becomes an even bigger media circus at this point.
Yeah, it was well, just his swagger and stuff and all, through it all. Like, I mean, it was for doing what he was doing. He was
I think this is
it.
One of those cases too, where it's like sometimes, especially with like in regards to law enforcement, they're so good at letting people just talk and do things that it's like, all right, he's going to hang himself. Let him talk.
Yeah,
let him
that's
show.
Where he screwed up.
He's showing up to court every day in $2,000-$3,000 suits. He's got the pinky ring. He's got the whole thing. I mean, he was literally the stereotypical Godfather. You would think that this guy would have just shown up in like a Sears suit, maybe not even a suit, just like try to make himself look the part. Like,
one other guy would walk around in a bathrobe. One of the other bosses walk around in a bathrobe, so he'd think he's crazy.
And that's the thing. Like, you would think that they at a certain point,
but he thought he was untouchable. Teflon John, baby.
No, and that's or Gotti. I like that other one. They were calling him the Gotti when they were in regards to the assault charge. The guy just for Gotti, which I don't blame him. But yeah, I think inevitably, obviously we all know what happened. He would get convicted. He would pass away in prison.
Well, yeah, he was here. He was
at the FedMed here for a while, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
I actually know that one of the doctors that worked on him while he was there, which you don't know. It's not like they say, hey, guess what? You're doing a surgery next week on this guy. That you just know that what you got, you just go in and do it. And he looked down, he's like, oh my God, that's John Gotti. But yeah.
Well, also they had help because they had Sammy the Bull, and Sammy Bull was his right-hand man, and then they got Sammy to flip because John Gotti was on tape talking bad about Sammy. So Sammy's like, screw that, I'm gonna make a deal. And so the crazy thing is that besides John Gotti, who's dead, a lot of the other mobsters, they've done their time and they're all out back living their life,
doing what they do.
And like I said, these YouTube channels are actually really, really informative and
some of the stories likable guys tell are just unbelievable.
The stories that Sammy the Bull tells are incredible.
One other thing that I think that at least hopefully if you are in this part of the world and you are trying to get in with mafia or do mobster stuff, just consider the fact that in this story alone, right, they had 90 seconds of tape to listen to, and a lot of the stuff that they did get was inaudible. And so these guys would listen to that over and 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 over until they could actually figure out what was being said to then use as evidence in court or to get court orders to continue surveillance or press charges, whatever it is. Just consider AI now.
Yeah,
I was watching that, thinking that part,
thinking
about what they did with the Beatles recordings, and I'm like, dude, if they had AI when they did this, all they had to do was feed that stuff into a machine, and it would come out crystal clear as day what that was being said. So just keep that in mind. If you're, the chances are you're bugged. Chances are they're watching you, so don't be saying it out loud.
There's cameras everywhere now.
Learn sign language. That's what I do, man. That's what you should do. Or create a new language. That's another thing. I would
create a new language, like the Egyptian,
or some kind of cryptic code. I don't know. Maybe learn Navajo. That's what you should do.
Oh.
Either way, we'll come back with our reviews. This episode, Dark Side of the Stream, continues next on 104.7 The Cave. Jay Stevens, Mike the Intern, back in the studio one more time. This episode, Dark Side of the Stream, 168, Get Gotti on Netflix. I would give this 3.5, 4, just because of the way it's edited.
Yeah, it very nicely
very,
done.
Very quickly.
Yeah,
There's a lot to digest.
I would have given it a 4, but then the Michael Franzese on his YouTube channel, he kind of debunked a few things that they got wrong in this.
I think they Hollywooded it a little bit.
Yeah, he pointed that out. So that's why I'm going 3.5.
Yeah, and again, there's a lot of gray in each person's recollection.
He said that Gotti never had a female associate. So that one girl that says she was an associate, he's like, no, that girl was not an associate. Yeah.
You would think that he's probably correct in that. That never really changed. There are, other than Griselda, who was working with.
Have we done
Pablo.
one about her? Blanco,
no, we did.
Blanco,
I think
Cocaine Cowboys 1 or 2.
Yeah, I think we've done it. But I'm looking forward to that movie or the show they're coming out with her with what's her face. But she's definitely not anywhere near looking like what Griselda did.
Yeah, Hollywood took liberty on that.
There's not a lot of female-made women in the history of the mafia. So yeah, I think it's kind of probably a subjective choice to put some of that stuff in. You can kind of feel like the Hollywood-esque part of this whole thing continued on into this documentary, but that's what that was. That's what it is.
Yeah, and it's all right. It was good. It was entertaining. Yeah. It's nice.
It was. Next week is my pick. We're going back to HBO Max for this one. This one is called Cowchilla, and it tells the story of a kidnapping that happened in the late 70s in California that involved a bus driver and I believe 26 children who were then basically buried underground.
Whoa.
Ever heard of it?
No.
Neither did I.
It almost rings a bell, but I'm not sure.
You were in the area when this happened.
Remember, and I said in the 70s, that was the thing.
You were there. We'll figure out if maybe Jay was one of these kids on the bus, and it's just a regressed memory. Either way.
Hypnotize me and all.
Yeah, we're gonna have a guest hypnotist in here so that he can go through his deep
regression
trauma. As always, you can watch these live on Facebook or YouTube 9 a.m. on Thursday mornings, or listen to them as a podcast on our 104.7 The Cave app for free, or during my show at 9 a.m. or Jay's show at 6 p.m. on 104.7 The Cave. I am Mike the Intern. That's Jay Stevens reminding you
we watch
movies,
documentaries,
so you don't have to. It's Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave.